This is one of the most important negative feedback loops we have. So this is a direct interaction between two endocrine glands, the pituitary gland and the thyroid gland. So remember, the pituitary gland is the small pea-sized gland at the base of your brain, always hanging on the outside. And the thyroid gland is the H-shaped gland just around your larynx or your throat, just below your voice box. Okay, so just wrapped around your trachea. So the reason that this is important is because it is two endocrine glands that affect each other. So the pituitary gland secretes thyroid-stimulating hormone, which travels in the bloodstream to the thyroid gland. Now that will obviously stimulate the thyroid gland because it's thyroid-stimulating hormone, and it stimulates the thyroid gland to do more of its thing, which is secrete thyroxin. Now, remember that thyroxin is the hormone that controls your metabolic rate. So if you have a lot of thyroxin, you will have a high metabolic rate. They're directly proportional. But the pituitary gland is sensitive to levels of thyroxin in your blood. So if you get too much thyroxin, your pituitary gland will decrease this secretion of TSH to stimulate the thyroid gland less so that it secretes less thyroxin. Same thing if that thyroxin gets too low. That low level will stimulate the pituitary gland. So the pituitary gland will stimulate more TSH to increase the thyroxin secretion from the thyroid gland. So remember, negative feedback is the mechanism used to maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis is about having this normal level of anything, hormones or blood sugar or salts, etc., in your blood. And it can be achieved, homeostasis, this normal range, can be achieved by the process of negative feedback, meaning something gets too high and it will be brought back down to normal. Something gets too low and it will be increased back to normal. So it brings about the negative response. So let's look at how this can be asked. So you can study this flowchart. You can also write it down in words in a paragraph if you want, but pay very special attention to the memos of past papers where they ask these questions. So you've got a normal level of thyroxin. Your thyroxin level in your blood will increase above normal, probably as you're exercising, for example. So it's important that you understand that thyroxin levels and your metabolic rate are directly proportional. So even if they talk about in the question that your metabolism or your cellular respiration rate increases above normal, that's as a result of thyroxin level rising above normal. So your thyroxin level rises above normal because your thyroid gland is producing more of it. You always say what produces the hormone. And that means that the pituitary gland, if you think of this diagram here, will be stimulated by this increased thyroxin level. So the pituitary gland will decrease its secretion of thyroid-stimulating hormone, which essentially means that the thyroid gland will be stimulated less. So because there's less thyroid-stimulating hormone, the thyroid gland is stimulated less. So that means it decreases its thyroxin secretion back to normal, which would cause a lowering in your metabolic rate or your cellular respiration. Now, if, for example, you are sleeping, so that will make your metabolism be like it's time to drop your metabolism. So during sleep, your metabolism will need to drop and your thyroxin level will drop below normal. But now let's say you now want to wake up and you want to go about your day. The thyroxin level being too low for what your body needs when you're waking up will then stimulate your pituitary gland, which will then increase its secretion of TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, which then stimulates the thyroid gland more. So the thyroid gland is stimulated more because there's more thyroid stimulating hormone, which will increase your thyroxin secretion, which will then increase your metabolic rate, but your thyroxin level will increase back to normal. So this loop, negative feedback loop, is constantly changing based on what your body needs. But when you're stating it, you've got to name the glands, the pituitary gland and the thyroid, and you've got to say what each gland produces. So the pituitary gland produces TSH. If there's more TSH, the thyroid gland is stimulated more, which means it produces more thyroxin. Now, if that thyroxin is too high, the pituitary gland is stimulated by that high amount of thyroxin, so it lowers the TSH secretion. So then you would just talk about it decreasing TSH. which then decreases the stimulating of the thyroid gland, which then would cause a decrease in thyroxin secretion. So it's all about this negative feedback. But the great thing is they are all directly proportional. So if there's more TSH, there's more thyroxin, which means higher metabolic rate. So more. The key is not to forget the different hormones and what secretes them. So the pituitary gland, remember, will secrete thyroid stimulating hormone. The thyroid can't produce a hormone that stimulates itself. So thyroxin comes from the thyroid gland, but thyroid stimulating hormone comes from the pituitary and travels to the thyroid gland. And another reminder, adrenaline's one action, one of the many things it does, is it increases the secretion of thyroxin. So it will increase the thyroxin secretion, which will then cause your metabolic rate to increase. So your muscles and your brain cells can function more effectively with a lot of cellular respiration in an emergency. Let's have a look at 2 past exam papers. So this question here was taken from the NSC November exam of 2021. So you can find this in there. So this question was, describe the negative feedback mechanism that occurs when thyroxin levels are too high. So that means the thyroid gland is producing too much thyroxin. So what you need to say here, the pituitary gland is stimulated to secrete less TSH. The lower levels of TSH cause the thyroid gland to secrete less thyroxin, and then you get that mark there for saying thyroxin levels return to normal. So it's a 5-mark question, which is not uncommon, but in the memo there are only 5 possible marks. So it's important that you say every single point step by step, even though you might think it sounds redundant. Then the next question related to the role of thyroxin. A person has a medical condition that results in an under-secretion of thyroxin, so they're going to have a low metabolic rate. Explain why this person will gain weight if thyroxin levels remain too low continuously. So again, the rate of metabolism decreases, or cellular respiration, that's what metabolism is. It's just one example. So less glucose is broken down and converted into energy, and any excess glucose you have in your body will be converted and stored as fat or glycogen. So then they're going to gain weight. But it's the key thing here that the glucose actually converts to fat after your glycogen supplies are full. So let's look at another question, which came from the November NSC paper 2017. So that 2017 paper, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it's a key question. An investigation was conducted to determine the effects of different amounts of thyroxin on metabolic rate. So they used 9 mice, 3 groups A, B, C, and then each group received the same amount of water, a different diet. So diet X, all the nutrients were added. We don't know which group received that diet. Diet Y, all the essential nutrients, but with extra thyroxin. And diet Z is a diet that has added something that hinders the effects of thyroxin. So what I would write here is I would say increased metabolic rate. This one will have a decreased metabolic rate, and this one will have normal metabolic rate. So I'm just understanding that extra thyroxin that is added there, extra thyroxin is going to increase the metabolic rate. Inhibited thyroxin, decreased metabolic rate. So we know that diet X was given to group A, the normal one. So that's what we would call the control, because that's going to be what you compare your results to. And then B, we don't know, and C, we don't know. But if you're looking here at the initial mass and the mass after 3 weeks, this group lost weight and this group gained weight. So already I'm thinking the group that loses weight has a high metabolism because they burn glucose more quickly. So already I'm thinking here that this group was probably given diet Y, and the other group was probably given diet Z. Okay, that's my thought process, because this one gained weight. So they had a low metabolism, if you think back to the previous question. Name the groups in which the average mass increased. So that was group A. Be careful here. Name the group. So it's not the diet, it's the group. So it was group A and C. You follow your memo there. From the investigation, state the independent variable. What was different? Okay, it was the amount of thyroxin that was added. This group had no added thyroxin. This group had added thyroxin. This group had minimized thyroxin. So the thing that is different, That's the independent variable. So that is the amount of thyroxin. The dependent variable and how it's measured. If you read your aim, they're trying to investigate the effects of different amounts of thyroxin, independent variable, on metabolic rate. You always read the blurb, to determine. That's the aim. So you can actually take the independent variable from there. But metabolic rate is your dependent variable. And that means that they measured it in two ways, in the change of mass and the consumption of oxygen. So this group consumed a lot of oxygen because they were undergoing a lot of cellular respiration. So again, arrange the diets in increasing amounts of thyroxin, so from least amount to most amount. So that would be Z first, then X is normal, then Y is extra. So Z, X, Y, because Z has inhibited thyroxin, Y has added, but X is normal. Then which group was given diet Y? I've done the working out already. Group B, refer to changes in mass and oxygen consumption to explain your answer. That's a 5-mark question. So this is about the working of thyroxin. So the mass of the rats decreased since body fat is used because you've got a fast metabolism. This is why people with a fast metabolism can lose weight. They burn their body fat more easily. The oxygen consumption is the highest, which indicates an increased rate of metabolism or cellular respiration, which is caused by the higher thyroxin diet. And diet Y is the only diet that contains thyroxin. So it's very much step by step. That why do you say it's diet Y? It's because it's got added thyroxin. But what did the results show you that made you assume that this rat was fed diet Y? It's because of the faster metabolism, which led to the following things happening. And then what was ways to ensure validity? It's all about the fixed variables, keeping things the same. Age of the rats the same amount of food, same time the food is given, same species of rats, same instrument to measure mass, same person taking the measurements, identical or same cages. So please pay attention to a question like this. It's really good practice.